Welcome back. Now, people who have witnessed sudden loss of their loved ones may often suffer from disturbed sleep patterns, nightmares, and as well as exhaustion. On how to cope with grief, we're now joined by clinical psychologist Eunice Gonzo. Ms. Gonzo, good evening and welcome to the Daily Roundup.
Good evening.
Now, to begin with, many times, one focuses on the emotional aspect of grief, which is understandable, but forgetting also that there's the physical and social and cognitive aspect as well. What is your take on this and the reactions to an individual dealing with grief?
As you put it, in most cases, I suppose that when it comes to grieving, it is basically a process that starts after we have lost someone or something very valuable to us. So you find that why most people are most likely going to concentrate on the emotional aspect of it, which is basically you find that either the person is crying, they are sad, they got low mood, or that you find that they are just not there. So the emotional aspect of it is usually what you are confronted with or what everyone is seeing. But when it comes to grieving and the whole bereavement process, there's a lot of, like you mentioned, the physical aspect of it. It's also the behavioral aspect of it. And at times it goes unnoticed. The physical aspect of it is that like any emotion that, any mood emotion that alters your mood, what you find is that most people are likely to have physical symptoms like gastrointestinal problems. Your immunity is going to go down because stress has that effect on the body. So you find that the person will be prone to illnesses. Most people are going to experience chest tightness, and they are just like physically they would be not well. Tension, headaches, lack of energy, apathy, and behaviorally, they will also start acting in such a way where you find that the person is not going out at all anymore. The person would rather like to isolate themselves. There's also other aspect that they lose interest in activities that they used to enjoy. So behaviorally, they will start acting in a way that you can see that maybe there's depression or something is not quite right. So, and having said that, it's very important for us to actually also look at not only the emotional, but also that at times people will have more physical or behavioral aspect of it more than even emotional, because we all react to bereavement or grief in different ways.
I'd like for you to take us very briefly through the different stages of grief.
Mm. Okay, usually when we speak about stages, people necessarily always think that it will come one after the other, or that it's going to, one takes a certain period and then before it will go into the next period. Please, it's very important for people to know that these stages, you can feel them either at once, like one after the other in one day. At times you are stuck at one stage, but the first one mostly is denial. Usually it's denial and disbelief. This cannot be happening. This is not happening. It can be. And then you find that it's the second stage usually, which comes there is that because it's denial, shock, disbelief, and then you've got the bargaining. Now the bargaining usually comes with especially what we call when you anticipate grief. Like, at times someone is sick for a very long time. So you know that maybe eventually that they are going to die. So you start bargaining with God, or bargaining that please, if all this happens, everything will be fine. And at times you also bargain when it's a sudden grief, that let it not be true. And I would be a good person and I would do things right. And then the next stage is anger. Anger with the world, anger with God, anger with everyone, like why is this happening? Anger with life. And then one of the worst one, and that's usually the one most of us pick up on, is the depression. Now, with the depression is that where you now see that the person, where you can now see all these emotions that we were talking about. And that's when a lot of people now look at that stage. And the last ones usually is what we call acceptance, where you have now accepted that this person or whatever you have lost is lost for good.
And of course, like you mentioned earlier, the bulk process of grieving is an emotional, psychological process. And you know, there are, not often, but there are incidences where that would then manifest into a health issue if it is severe and so forth. In the instance where we know no health issues derive from this, what can one do to help yourself, and what can you indulge in to help yourself through a grieving process?
You see, the whole thing that at times I feel that as people we are very hard on ourselves. You see, in life, for you to not grieve at all or never experience grief at all in your life, it means you should have never loved anything or anyone. So grieving is not just about people. Grieving can be about a lot of incidences. You understand? There are people who grieve because they've got a bad medical report, and then their health is affected. There are people who grieve because they've lost a loved one. There are people who are grieving because they are going through a divorce. So there are people who are grieving because they lost a job. So grief comes in different aspects. So I think what everyone should know is that it's a normal process of life that we should go through and we should overcome. So the biggest problem why grief sometimes remains stuck with a lot of people is because we are in denial. So it is okay to grieve. And the road to grieving is a very difficult road, but eventually we will overcome and we will come through. And it does not mean, because at times people would ask you, does it mean that I would forget my loved one? You know? And I would always say that, no, it's not that. You just learn to live with that pain. So if you are really struggling, the first thing to do is to go through the process. You know what really worries me is when people say, for example, you even go, maybe someone passed away, and someone says, oh, she's so strong. She's really holding it together. She's not crying. That is wrong. The best thing to help yourself is to allow yourself to feel the pain. It is okay to mourn the person you love because you love them. So the first thing you must do when you are at home or wherever you are is to allow yourself through the process. It's only when you cannot deal with it anymore. And it's now turning to other health issues. Because there are people, because of grief, that they start giving up on life. And there are people who have given up on life that they also end up dying just because they did not go through the process of getting someone to help them cope with grief. That's why there are therapists. That's why we have mental professionals. It is when you are stuck or it's complicated grief or it's cumulative grief because grief comes in different aspects.
Well, Dr. Gonzo, unfortunately, that's all the time we do have for this conversation, but thank you so much for your insights and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Let's take another quick break. We'll be back with more conversations after this.